What's up guys, my name is Brandon, welcome to Quick Flicks. Today, we are wrapping up the Cornetto trilogy with The World's End, directed by Edgar Wright, releasing in 2013. The World's End is a ton of fun, and hot take, but it's my personal favorite out of the entire trilogy, following 5 pals that reconvene to try and outdo their epic pub crawl from 2 decades ago. After directing a horror and action duo of films, what better way to top off the series than with a sci-fi film? Yeah, that's right, mother heckers, we got robots. Well, kinda robots. Aliens, perhaps? How about we stop assuming and find out for ourselves by hopping into the movie? The movie opens up with the introduction of Gary King, our primary protagonist. A flashback is presented, and it is described how he and his pals, Andy, Oliver, Steven, and Peter, used to just have fun in high school. They excitedly wait till their last day of high school to play a game called the Golden Mile, in which they had to visit 12 different pubs in their hometown, Newton Haven, and drink a pint of beer at each in one night until they reached the 12th and final pub, The World's End. So, as planned, the 4 of them began playing the Golden Mile, buying herbal refreshments from the Reverend Green, and fighting other pub goers, causing them to have to run off to their little hideout they called the Smokehouse, which is where it all went heck up. They get way too blasted and blow off the final 3 pubs. This entire flashback is wrapped up with now 40-year-old Gary explaining it to his AA group. A member in the circle inquires if he has any regrets about not making it to the World's End. Gary answers no, but obviously does indeed have regrets. The next day, Gary returns to his hometown, where he first meets up with Peter, who is now in charge of his father's exhibition room. He asks Peter how he feels about giving the Golden Mile a shot again, and Peter somewhat accepts, mainly just to catch up with his old pals. Next, he visits Steven, which, fun fact, he was in Hot Fuzz as one of the Andys, who now works in the construction field, and Gary is luckily able to persuade him after some hesitancy. Oliver, which, fun fact, was in Shaun of the Dead as Yvonne's boyfriend, and Hot Fuzz as Met Sargent, who is now a real estate agent, accepts to take on the challenge as well, but obviously has some doubts, especially after Gary ruins his potential sell on a house.
It's just a little bit out of our price range.
Well, what's it on for?
1.2 million.
Fuck off.
You have my card?
Last up, Gary visits Andy, who declines the invitation immediately, claiming that he has stopped drinking alcohol due to an injury he sustained the last time they attempted the Golden Mile. He also just doesn't like Gary much anymore and expresses how he is still stuck in his childish ways, while the rest of them have matured and moved on. Hearing this, Gary uses some persuasion techniques, giving him a long overdue loan repayment and claiming his mother just passed away before leaving. In the morning, Gary's pals meet up at the train station, even Andy, and they're happy to see each other once again. That excitement quickly wears off though, when Gary finally shows up an hour late in his antique ride from high school, which they refer to as the Beast. Not as excited as Gary, the gang puts their luggage in the car and head off on their journey to Newton Haven. Needing a break from their journey of driving and jamming to some of their high school music, they go to a rest stop, and Andy, as he watches Gary play a video game, remarks that he hasn't changed at all in all of these years. He notes that Gary at least paid him back though, and the others mention he borrowed 200 quid off of each of them. This obviously frustrates Andy, but just blows it off as Gary never admits that he's wrong. They finally arrive at Newton Haven and check into a hotel. But they quickly head out, and after wandering around their hometown, they finally arrive at their first pub, the First Post. Gary declares that the game is about to begin. He places an order for 5 glasses of beer, but Andy, being the sober man that he is, requests a water instead, disgusting Gary. They drink up, then proceeding to the second pub, the Old Familiar, which does look quite familiar, and Andy once again refuses to sip the beer. The fellas have a sit down, he asking Andy about Gary's mother's funeral, and he breaks it down as,
"It's difficult to put into words, but if I had to choose 3, I would say really, really sad." Oh no, that's 2, isn't it? How about really, very sad?
Oliver has a quick call on his wireless earpiece, then informing the others that his sister Sam is in town as well, and she's on her way to the pub to join. Gary and Steven get quite excited, and we find out about how they used to fight over her in school. Gary was the winner though, as they did the do in the Disableds at the pub the last time they tried the Golden Mile. This debate is ended by Oliver, who doesn't like them talking inappropriately about his sister. Sam then walks in during the heated conversation, beaming with delight at the opportunity to see them all together again. Well, besides Gary. Steven goes to get her a drink while she takes a quick potty break. Gary follows behind, thinking she's giving him the sign to do the do again. Sam's quite shocked and notes how he hasn't changed a bit since high school. Refusing to leave, she becomes enraged and slaps him across the face, then fleeing quickly after due to the uncomfort of Gary. This makes Steven sad, as he's still in love with her after all these years. The pals then finish their drinks and head to the next pub, the Famous Cock. On the way in, they notice an old man conspiracy theorist they used to know, Basil, although he doesn't seem to remember them, the group finding it a bit odd. The bartender then notifies Gary that he's barred, due to an incident the last time they tried the Golden Mile. This doesn't stop him from getting the pint he needs in order to continue the Golden Mile though. He sips up, and they continue to the next pub, the Cross Hands. The group reminisces over some happy times they spent there on New Year's Eve during their high school days. While chatting, a man named Shane walks up and asks Peter if the chair next to him is available for him to use. Peter, too stunned to speak, just stares. Gary speaks up for him, giving Shane the go-ahead. Peter then tells his pals that Shane used to tease him in school, dislodging his eyeball, causing him to hide in the bathroom during certain classes, and just overall, ruining a large portion of his high school days. He expresses how he's so bothered by the fact Shane looked straight through him and didn't even recognize him, as if it all meant nothing. Gary ruins the emotional moment with shots, enraging Andy. The two go back and forth before the group agrees to just call it quits. Gary runs off to the bathroom, all sad and stuff. When a kid walks in, Gary asks if he and his friends would like to join him in the Golden Mile tonight, but just gets ignored. Gary takes this as a sign of disrespect and gets into a physical fight with him. After a back and forth fight, Gary finally rock bottoms this fool, taking his head off, revealing blue goo. Back outside, Andy notices Gary's cell phone ringing and decides to take a gander to see who's calling, and lo and behold, it's his mom. He immediately goes to the bathroom, screaming at Gary, who is in shock from taking the kid's head off. Andy finally snaps into reality once the boy's body begins to move, and he stands up without a head, stunning everyone in the room. The remainder of that boy's friends then enter the restroom, having a showdown with Gary and the crew before an all-out brawl occurs. After a long and very fun fight sequence involving some limbs being removed, hurricanranas, and people's elbows, the crew takes out the boys. They then come to the conclusion that everyone in town has been replaced with robots, which is why everyone seems weird and no one recognizes them, including Shane Hawkins and Basil, so they can't really get help in any way. They all emerge from the bathroom, trying to look normal, have a sit down, and begin arguing, insisting that they need to get out of town as soon as possible. Gary argues that they can't leave, as everyone knows that they're doing the Golden Mile, so it'd be suspicious if they just up and left. Andy, fed up with the situation he got dragged into, hammers down all of the shots, and agrees with Gary since it's pointless trying to argue with him. They finish their drinks and boo-boo out of there. On the way to the fifth pub, the Good Companions, they notice everyone in town is creepily staring at them and walking in sync with one another. They chug the fifth pint and stumble onto the next, the Trusty Servant. They have a sit down this time around, as they're starting to get quite drunk. Oliver moseys onto the bathroom to freshen up, while the guys notice the Reverend Green standing at the bar. They go to talk to him to see what the flip is going on, and he informs them that these aren't robots, since the word robot means slave, and these aren't slaves. They're actually here to help the human species grow. He also goes on to say that he works for him, and has a nice, high-paying job. His pals next to him tell him to keep his trap shut, as he's already said too much. The phone suddenly rings, and the bartender hands it to the Reverend, saying it's his supervisor. That don't look good. He finishes his drink and walks off to his impending doom. Oliver returns, and the group decides to get on out of there as Gary finishes his drink. They move on to the two-headed dog, where the bartender immediately recognizes them, but it's pretty obvious he's not human. While the group sips and debates on a name for the robots, Sam arrives. Gary takes her to the restroom and explains everything that's going on, but she thinks it's ludicrous and slaps him again before leaving. Sam then proceeds to sit with her twin friends, telling them what Gary said. They stand up, acting strange, when Gary arrives and tears off one of their heads to prove his statement. He then takes out the other twin sister, Steven showing up after, thinking Gary and Sam were out there having a romantic moment. He gets jealous and lays it all out on the table, letting her know that he's in love with her. Before Sam can tell him that she has no interest in Gary, a twin with legs for arms gets back up and darts at Steven.
He's got legs for arms.
After another fun fight scene, they take care of these fools and head back inside, where the group is still deciding on a name for the robots, or as Andy is suggesting, Smashy Smashy Eggman. Drawing a blank on a proper name, they decide to call him Blanks. They head to the next pub, The Mermaid, which seems to be a bit more on the college kid side of things. This doesn't stop Gary, Andy, and Peter from having a good time with the marmalade sandwich though. While they have fun, Steven gets kidnapped by Basil, who we find out is actually still human. He explains the entire situation to Steven, informing him that the blue fluid objects are not robots, but aliens that arrived the night that they first started the Golden Mile back in 1990, and they are here to make humans more progressive, not to murder them. He says that it's not an invasion, but rather an emerging. The robots aren't evil, they're supposedly much friendlier. They can make a copy of you as long as they have your DNA. Basil leaves him, telling him to get out of Newton Haven as soon as possible. Steven then goes to find Sam, and then getting the others who are blending in. The group finally leaves the pub, and Steven suggests that they just get out of Newton Haven right now. But Oliver recommends otherwise, saying Gary's plan is still the best they have. At this point, Gary has doubts about Oliver.
1990 model Oliver was out of commission by this point.
What are you saying?
I like the new you!
Oh, never mind. They head to the 9th pub, where they run into their old English teacher from high school, Mr. Shepard, played by Pierce Bronson, James Motherheckin Bond himself. He offers them a round of beers, then informing and attempting to persuade them to join the Blanks. Oliver is surprisingly very understanding, and agrees to join, Andy taking note of this and smashing his head in with a stool, revealing that he is also an extraterrestrial, which happened earlier when he went to the restroom alone. All bystanders and Mr. Shepard go full alien mode, demanding it is time that they join the Blanks. Andy don't care though, and breaks Mr. Shepard's face, before losing it and fighting the entire pub. The group joins in, and we get a very fun fight sequence. Andy taking on the mob with stools, Sam saving Peter, Steven smashing heads in, and Gary just trying to finish his pint, but keeps getting interrupted. Mr. Shepard tries to calm down the situation, and recommends another round and discussion, but Gary refuses, leaving the Blanks no choice but to attack again. The group gets overwhelmed, and Andy yells for Gary to meet with them at the smokehouse. Gary and Sam run upstairs, knocking out 2 Blanks, and getting to the rooftop. They find Sam's car, and she suggests climbing down the drain pipe, but Gary has other plans.
Climb down the drain pipe!
He tells her to get out, and they say their goodbyes. Gary then leaves and runs into more Blanks, but tries taking a shortcut. Unfortunate. He finally gets to the smokehouse and informs the others that he sent Sam on her way, angering them, as she's the only reliable transportation to get out of Newton Haven. The group then badgers Gary about if he's a Blank or not, since he was by himself while the others were all together the entire time. He quickly proves he's still human and shuts down the debate. They take a peek outside to see the Blanks closing in on them. Gary decides to sneak out, the group following behind. While in a foresty area, Pete falls behind, when his bully, Shane, comes out from behind a tree and eerily apologizes for the way he used to treat him in school. The group finally notices his disappearance and finds him beating Shane. About to go save him, they stop in their tracks, as Pete quickly gets surrounded and turned into a Blank. Aw, sad. I liked Pete. The group, obviously saddened by the situation, declare it's time to leave, but Gary says they must continue the Golden Mile. Andy says nah son, and knocks him out. They carry Gary with them into town again, where every Blank and even a huge Blank are looking for him. Using the map to navigate, they realize they have to go through pub number 10, the King's Head, in order to get to the Beast, just parked behind it. They run inside, where Gary wakes up, and of course, has another pint. Andy, trying to be nice, tells him 10 pubs is a great accomplishment, but it's time to go home. The Golden Mile being Gary's only life goal, he gives them the keys and runs off. Andy follows pursuit, but Steven takes the opportunity to get the Beast. Andy tells Gary through the mob of Blanks on the streets until they reach the 11th pub, the Hole in the Wall. While Gary pours and sips, Andy fights off the mob solo, starting to get overwhelmed. Steven crashes the Beast through the wall and tells them to get the heck in the car. Gary, obviously not listening, dives out of the window. Andy, not having another option, since Steven is getting dragged out by the huge Blank, follows Gary once again. They are finally closing in on their destination, the World's End. Gary makes it, about to finish the 12th and final pint, when Andy prevents him from doing so. They get into a little scuffle, and emotional chatter about how their lives are not so perfect. Gary tells Andy that he was in AA, and Andy tells Gary that his wife left him and took the kids. Since this is all Gary has, and he just wants to complete it, Andy finally gives in and lets him go for it. But as Gary goes to pour the drink, it initiates an elevator-like machine and lowers them far underground to see the town's blank staring at them. They hear a voice that is the alien's leader speaking to Gary, informing him that they want to make humans more like themselves, aka sophisticated. Humans will not age, and will not be murdered in this manner. They show Gary his adolescent self, and tell him that if he obeys them, he won't age. But Gary refuses, twisting his head off, and demands that the network leave Earth. The leader essentially says no, claiming that humans cannot exist without them. The conversation is getting quite heated. They might need some backup.
Stevie, Enough!
After some back and forth arguing with the leader, he gets tired of Gary and agrees to leave.
It's pointless arguing with you. You will be left to your own devices.
Really?
Yeah, fuck it.
However, while the group is celebrating, the area begins to deteriorate. Luckily, Basil comes to the rescue and points them to a ladder to get out of there. The three musketeers make it out and see the building burning down. They begin to break down a bit, thinking that this is the end of the road. But Sam shows up, and they drive away as an electro wave pulse is generated as a result of their abandonment, and it spreads all across the planet. They have a sit down on a hill and look at the destroyed Newton Haven, just happy to be alive. As a result, all of the world's electronics begin to malfunction, but as the network fades away, all beings revert to their human form. We see Andy in a circle after a few years, and he tells them that after the network departed, they went into the Dark Ages, but they were able to rebuild. After that, all humans, including Oliver and Peter, revert to their previous state and resume their duties. Sam and Steven are now married and live just outside London, but he had no clue where Gary was. But we know. Gary enters a tavern with his alien companions, which are just the young versions of the group, and requests 5 waters, but the bartender refuses to serve them due to no blanks being allowed, resulting in a fight, and the screen cuts to black. Let me know what you thought of The World's End. Did you like it? Hate it? Was it your favorite in the trilogy? Let me know down below. In fact, I want to know your ranking of the entire trilogy. I'm really interested to know your guys' thoughts. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.